Good evening, everyone. My name is Marvin Arrington Jr., Fulton County Commissioner for District 5. I want to welcome you to our budget town hall, where we will find all about what is going on with the Fulton County budget. This is your Fulton County budget. Your tax dollars pay for it. So we want to hear from you as far as to see what you would like included in the budget. Now, our finance team has done a great job, as they always do, of coming up with a draft budget, and the commissioners will likely adopt a final budget in January or February. But we need your help, we need your input and your support to tell us how you would like to see your money spent. So without further ado, I'll bring on James Herschel from our finance department to talk about the budget for the upcoming 2022 budget fiscal year. James, welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner Arrington, and it's a pleasure to be able to join you today and join all of the members of the public. Today, I'm going to take you over a presentation that outlines the proposed budget for 2022. Before I start with the presentation, I want to give you a little bit of the background on how the budget is created every year. This is a budget that process that begins around the month of June and July with training sessions for all of the different departments and agencies. Then around the month of August, we have our departments submit their budget needs for the upcoming year. In September, we start reassessing those needs and start classifying those needs based on the available resources the county has. And this is a process that takes approximately a month to 2 months, in which we vet all of the submissions. Around the month of October, there are some budget workshops that are held with departments, agencies, and elected officials, where all of the budget requests are discussed. And between the month of October and November, the executive team of Fulton County develops the budget that is ultimately the proposed budget for the upcoming year. In between the month of November, and as Commissioner Arrington mentioned, January, the Board of Commissioners assesses the budget that was submitted by the executive team and makes accommodations, changes, and adjustments as needed. Being that said, I'm going to take you over a short presentation, and this short presentation will give you a global view of our budget and our main themes as we look into 2022. And hopefully you can all see my screen right now. So the first part, and just to get a understanding of our overall budget, probably most of you are familiar with what you hear during our budget and during the Board of Commissioners meetings about the general fund. That represents our biggest pool of resources and is used to fund every type of service in the county, ranging from the sheriff services and the jail stewardship, all the way through senior services, arts services, and also internal services like our accounting, our HR, and our IT departments. When you look at the schedule in front of you, you will see that there are a number of, let's call it segments, outlined on the left side of the screen. And it also includes at the top the years in which all of those segments have funding allocated for. You will see that there is one line highlighted in orange, and that represents what we call our, this is our hearts and minds. What you can see from here is our budget has ranged in around $1.2 billion. And at this stage, the proposed budget for 2022 is scheduled to be around $1.2 billion, $1.25 billion. Out of that $1.25 billion, you will see that the general fund encompasses around $846 million. So moving to the next slide. What you will see is, as part of the proposed budget, the finance department and the county manager's office take all of the allocations for the upcoming year and groups these allocations based on the strategic priority areas that have been outlined by the Board of Commissioners. As we move into 2022, the allocation of this funding will be made across arts and libraries, infrastructure, open and responsible government, the justice system, and health and human services. Our largest allocation as we look into the upcoming year will be in our justice and safety, open and responsible government, and infrastructure. As you look at these three specific areas, the funding will be somewhere around $300 million. Then we will have an allocation that will be geared towards health and human services, that is $212 million. And then we have a smaller allocation that will be made towards the arts and libraries of approximately $50 million. As I mentioned previously, our heart, or like the biggest pool of funding that is subsequently allocated for all the different services, is our general fund. This general fund is approximately $846 million and represents something around $126 million more than what we have projected as expenditures in 2021. So there is a large increase in terms of the budget when we look at what we think we're going to spend in 2021 and our plan of expenditures as we move into 2022. As part of our assessment of all of the budget requests, our assessment of outstanding commitments, the executive team and the county manager have identified 4 key themes as we move into 2022. Those themes include our elections. As many of you know, next year we'll have the midterm elections. We are also going to be focusing on employees' contributions and payments. We will also be looking at the elected officials and some of the needs that they will have in the upcoming year. And last but not least, we will be focusing resources once again towards our COVID emergency. This will be year number 3. Remember, the health emergency began in 2020. We allocated funds for that in 2021, and we will continue our commitment for 2022. I will explain a little bit more in detail as we move into that section of the presentation. I think the following slide gives you, I think, a good view of how our budget will be structured as we move into 2022. The way we look at the budget is we try to look at what is the amount of funding that is needed for us to be able to just provide the same level of services in 2022 as was provided in 2021. And we call that our base budget. As we move into 2020, we have identified our base budget to be $730 million. From that point on, we start looking into those 4 themes that I mentioned previously: elections, employees, our elected officials in the justice system, and the emergency of COVID-19. In addition to that, and I will cover this later in the presentation, we have also set aside additional resources to ensure that other services that we have been providing over the last couple of years continue to be provided at the same level of services. That happens because in some cases, some of the services received enhancements, and we want to continue enhancement levels for those type of services. So as you move through this slide, you will see how we move from our base budget of $730 million all the way to our proposed budget of $847 million. So the way that I structure this presentation is I want to take that graph that I just showed you with the different squares and take a little bit of a moment into each of those squares to tell you exactly what we have in each of those. So the first square, if you recall, is what we call the base budget. That's a $730 million investment. And what it assumes is that we maintain the same level of services as we had in 2021. So what do we assume in this $730 million? We assume that we keep our positions at the same level as last year, our base budget. We also assume that we continue to fund those operational expenses that we had in the previous year. We make adjustments for our pension contributions, ensure that we have sufficient funding to cover new debt service and commitments for capital. And also, of course, if there are incremental costs in some of our contracts, we make sure that that funding is allotted to meet those commitments. So that is all what's encompassed in our $730 million base budget. The next step of what I described earlier as being part of our teams is our elections for 2022. So we have a mid-year election, amid the mid-year elections, or election season. We will have an important gubernatorial race. And taking those things in consideration, the county has or will be allocating at least $33 million in additional funding to our registration elections department to ensure that we can hold successful primary and runoff elections. And at the same time that we meet all of the new commitments associated with the SB 202 new legislation that was passed by the state of Georgia earlier this year. So we think that the resources that have been allocated will be sufficient to meet our commitment in this area and ensure that there is full compliance with the SB 202 requirements as we move into 2022. The next item in our graph, and if you recall, this theme relates to employees. So probably many of you have heard or have actually experienced that the economic impact of COVID had significant repercussions. Some of those are associated with inflationary pressures. Some of those are associated with people's view of what they call the Great Resignation. And of course, the county is also being impacted by some of these issues. So taking this in consideration, the executive team, as part of the proposed budget and through conversations with the Board of Commissioners, has created a robust plan to ensure that we can maintain and we can actually enhance our recruiting methodologies to ensure that we can keep our employees, keep our knowledge, and move the county forward. This is one of those areas that has been identified as a big organizational risk. And at this point, both the Board of Commissioners and the county manager have pledged a significant amount of resources to make sure we can offset the risk that is being presented at this time. There are a few programs that have been organized as part of our plan to address this challenge. One of those is our incremental compensation strategy, which is a program that was established around 2 years ago to ensure we value tenure within the county. We're also looking at the cost of living adjustment. And last but not least, we're also going to reassess the salaries and the ranges within our current payroll structure to ensure that we can retain and hire the best employees we can. Moving to the next theme within our structure is the needs of our elected officials within the justice system. We are allotting approximately $23 million in additional funding. And this funding will be mostly dedicated to our inmate outsourcing plan. Probably many of you who follow closely the situation at the Fulton County Jail have heard that there are some issues in terms of the number of inmates currently at the jail. And the county is currently in the process of trying to identify a solution. Part of that plan includes the allocation of additional resources to make sure we can satisfy and we can meet this challenge. We have also added some resources to the district attorney. I think the district attorney requested approximately 50 to 60 additional employees to help with all of their functions, investigations, and district attorneys to ensure that we can address some of the bottlenecks within our justice process. And hopefully this injection of resources will assist during or addressing this challenge. And we have also set aside additional funding for some of the other justice partners to make sure we satisfied some of their needs for the upcoming year. And last but not least, as part of our key 4 teams, we have additional $16 million, which represents a reserve that we'll be using in our general fund to meet any potential liabilities or non-reimbursable cost associated with FEMA requests that we have been filing during 2021. Just to make the long story short, the county has received funding from the federal government as part of the American Rescue Plan Act, but the county is trying to also optimize resources from other federal agencies, including FEMA. And one of the challenges, of course, when we use federal resources is that there are some limitations and in terms of what funds can be used for. And to ensure that we are able to cover every cost that as of today has been pledged towards vaccination and other emergency response efforts, we're setting aside some funding in case that FEMA decides that some of the costs that we're submitting for reimbursement are not reimbursable. And that part is really tricky. So that is being kept here as an insurance. And also, if by any reason some or part of this funding is not used, the plan is to use part of those resources also to cover the construction and one-time cost associated with a warehouse consolidation program that is currently in progress. So that is what this funding will be used for, either cover non-reimbursable costs from FEMA or to be able to meet the demands associated with one-time cost of our warehouse consolidation plan. And now moving to the last square in our graph is approximately $20 million in other investments. And these investments really touch probably every little piece of our departments, agencies, and elected officials. They move from behavioral health services, so we're enhancing those behavioral health services, to IT operational needs, other administrative needs, and also we're making sure that we have resources in our budget to meet demands associated with new vehicles. So this funding really touches every corner of the county and has been vetted and reviewed by the executive team with assistance from the different departments, agencies, and elected officials. And of course, given our limited resources, the executive team, after vetting each of those, has pointed out some specific investments that will be made as we move into 2022. I covered this really in just 1 minute, but as you remember from the original schedule that I shared with you today, Fulton County budget is around 1.2 billion. The general fund is just 846, but that means that there are another around 400 million in funds that are allocated across multiple, what we call internal organizations within our budget. They range from our water system through our airport and also the last unincorporated area of the county, which is our Fulton Industrial Boulevard. And also a part of our budget, we go through each of these different funds. That's the name we have for these different segments. We go through all of those different funds and make determinations of the resources available, and subsequently we allocate resources across all of these different funds. And the last piece of the puzzle is I wanted to share with you briefly our schedule of where we stand. So as Commissioner Arrington mentioned previously, the proposed budget was presented to the board in early November. We also held a public hearing, which took place on December 1st. This is a required budget hearing. And at this point, we will be reviewing the budget during the upcoming Board of Commissioners meeting, the first meeting in 2021, which I believe will occur on January 5th, and the second meeting in January 2022, which will be on January 19th. By the January 19th date, the expectation is that the Board of Commissioners will have to assess the budget and make those changes and adjustments to the budget. And I think that really concludes the short meeting. Hopefully I didn't went over 15 minutes, but hopefully you enjoy the discussion.
Thank you, James. That was very informative. Hopefully the public will see this as an opportunity to get a better understanding of our budget, number one, but again, two, to also make sure that they provide some input for our budget and the priorities that they would like to see. I did not see any questions come in. And Dorsha, maybe we can take this time to talk about our upcoming Dads, Daughters, and Dolls event.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. So this will be our 9th annual Dads, Daughters, and Dolls Plus Sons, where our office partners with the Sheriff's Office to be able to provide gifts, presents for inmates who are in Fulton County Jail, who also have children that live in Fulton County, toys for the Christmas holiday, so that the children can feel their father's love beyond the bars. Now, this event is not necessarily for just any kids that are in Fulton County. It's very special. And the inmates have taken the opportunity to fill out a questionnaire, provide us the names of their children, their age, how to get in contact with the caregivers. And also they have provided handwritten notes for the children. So, but we are looking for more donations. Friday ends the donation drive. And then next Monday and Tuesday, we will have drive-throughs. And usually prior to COVID, we would have gift wrapping events. But now that Omicron, the COVID variant, has made its way into Georgia, out of precaution, we will continue to do the drive-throughs to be able to disseminate the gifts to the families. So we look forward to this again. But if you have anything to spare, any toys that you have, please come to one of our 3 locations, either at the South Annex, Oak Hill, or Pryor Street, where Fulton County's government headquarters is. And we look forward to this, to be able to do this once again, so that these children can feel their father's love beyond the bars.
And the donations that she's talking about are toy donations. We're not accepting any money. So we want to make sure that we are clear about that. So any toys or items that you believe that would be good gifts for children ages 1 through 12. Again, this is a very special program. Certainly very happy to be partnering with Sheriff Labatt this year. on this endeavor. It's important that we give back to these children. Just because their parents are locked up doesn't mean that the parents don't love them and wouldn't like to provide a gift for them. So if you have the opportunity, please feel free to provide some gifts or toys for these young boys and girls. And I think that will do it, guys. That is our budget discussion. We didn't receive any questions, but again, we are looking for the public to
because they were at Commissioner Arrington's event. Okay, so yeah.
Say that again, Dorsey.
I was like, if we do have volunteers coming in, to make sure that they're not taking pictures of the children or with the children and posting those, because once again, this is sensitive. A lot of people may not know that the children's fathers are incarcerated, and we don't want to bring any hardship or any type of, embarrassment to the families. This is not what this is about. This is making sure that they're able to have some joy and some happiness, just like the rest of our children. So be cognizant of that. If you do come out and help us with disseminating the toys, not to take pictures of the family, and especially not the children.
Very well said. Thank you. Thank you. And I believe that will wrap us up. We've talked about our budget, but we still are looking for you, Fulton County residents and citizens, to provide input, feedback, about how you would like to see your Fulton County money spent, your tax dollars. So please reach out to me, my staff, or anyone in Fulton County so that we can receive those comments on your behalf. And as we hopefully will be able to take them into consideration as we get ready to take a vote and adopt the final budget for next year. Thank you, everyone. This will be the end of our District Dogs Budget Town Hall. Thanks again, James, for coming out and sharing the budget with us. Thanks, Dorshare, External Affairs, everyone, FGTV, for all your help in pulling this together.
Thank you for the
evening, everyone.
Take care.
Okay.